the covenant of grace is really, like I said, it is God's plan of redemption to redeem the world back to himself through the person and work of Jesus Christ. It goes through, and we see it first in Genesis 3:15. It moves on from Genesis 3:15 to the unilateral covenant that we see with Abraham, in Abraham chapter and Genesis chapter 12, Genesis chapter 15, Genesis chapter 17. And what happens is those are known as unilateral covenants. All right. So what is a unilateral covenant? A unilateral covenant is a covenant where God makes the promise. It is not conditional. It is not based upon if you do this, then I will. Amen. It is based off God saying, I will do this. So in Genesis 3:15, as brother Andre is putting up there, he says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. This is a promise. God is going to do this. And if God says he's going to do it, it is going to come to pass. Well, from this promise, he moves on to Genesis 12, and he makes a promise to Abraham that in you all the nations of the world will be blessed. Amen. That is a unilateral covenant that he's making with Abraham. As you see right here, he says in verse 3, he says, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. This is what God is getting at. All the families of the earth being blessed through Abraham. Well, we know what happened. Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob get a name changed to Israel, and he has the 12 tribes, the 12 sons. We call them the Israelites. Amen. Now, you have this covenant that's with Abraham that God has made. This covenant is going to, um, I guess you can use the term maybe evolve, or it's going to reveal itself more through redemptive history. Now, what you're going to get with the Israelites is you're going to get a bilateral covenant. Well, Trey, what is a bilateral covenant? A bilateral covenant is if you do this, then I'll do this. And we see that broken down in Exodus chapter 19. Now, in the Sinai covenant or the Mosaic covenant, there is no mercy in that. There is no mercy in a bilateral covenant because the covenant is conditional on our obedience. Now, a unilateral covenant is based simply on the promises of God. A bilateral covenant is based upon what? Our obedience. So the Sinai covenant is based upon if we do this, then God will do this. So you see that in Deuteronomy 28, Deuteronomy 29, they was given certain things that they must do. And if they do these things, then of course they will receive blessings. If they don't do these things, they will receive curses. So is Israel faithful to the covenant? Absolutely not. They break the covenant every chance they get, showing that never put faith in man, but only put faith in God. Israel, due to their rebellion,
Amen.
God should have destroyed them, and just like God should have destroyed us for our rebellion, amen. But what lingers in the background of the Sinai covenant or the Mosaic covenant is what? The covenant that God had with Abraham. Once again, there is no mercy in a bilateral covenant or the Sinai covenant. There's only mercy in the unilateral covenant when God makes a promise. When God makes a promise that regardless of what man does, I am going to do this. So when the Sinai covenant is given, Israel will either experience blessings or they will experience curses. Well, Israel sinned against the holy God, so they end up experiencing curses. But did God destroy Israel? No, he did not. Why? Because God made a unilateral covenant with Abraham before the Sinai covenant. So once again, what's lingering in the background of these covenants is the Abrahamic covenant, which falls under the covenant of grace. What falls also under that covenant, which is being shown through redemptive history as we keep going along, is the covenant that God had with David. The Davidic covenant is also a unilateral covenant that God promises to make.